In a tense moment amidst the dense forest of the Great Smoky Mountains, Tennessee, Emily Carter stood frozen, her heart pounding as her eyes met the radiant golden gaze of Onyx, the jaguar who had once been her childhood companion. Onyx, with a majestic presence and a coat shimmering under the forest light, stepped toward Emily. The entire expedition team held their breath. On a damp spring morning in the vast expanse of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Emily Carter awoke to the sound of birdsong and the fresh scent of the earth after rain. As the only daughter of James Carter, a visionary conservationist, Emily had an unconventional childhood, growing up surrounded by the care of her family and the companionship of creatures that, for many, existed only in documentaries or as symbols of conservation efforts. From a very young age, Emily was introduced to the jaguars in the reserve. Her father believed that fostering a bond between humans and animals early on could cultivate a generation of passionate and dedicated conservationists. Shadow and Onyx, two majestic jaguars, quickly became Emily's inseparable companions. They were powerful creatures, yet gentle with her, displaying a warmth and closeness akin to human affection. Emily learned to walk under Shadow's watchful eyes, the jaguar occasionally extending a large paw to steady her when she stumbled over tree roots. Onyx, on the other hand, was her playmate. He loved to stealthily move through the underbrush with Emily, filling the air with laughter and soft, rumbling purrs. Together, they shared peaceful moments under the shade of oak and pine trees, with Onyx attentively watching as young Emily proudly displayed her forest discoveries. The harmony between the young girl and the jaguars was carefully monitored by the reserve's caretakers and James himself, who documented every interaction, hoping one day to prove to the world that peaceful coexistence between species was possible and beneficial. On Emily's 5th birthday, her father gave her a necklace with a small silver jaguar pendant. The necklace symbolized her lifelong commitment to her animal friends and the mission of conservation. James knelt beside her, fastening the necklace around her neck, and said with a proud smile, "My dear, you are a bridge between our worlds. The jaguars accept you as one of their own, and that is a precious gift, but also a great responsibility." Emily's early years were marked by a profound sense of purpose and boundless love for her jaguar companions. She grew up understanding that every moment with Shadow and Onyx was a life lesson, teaching her about respect, care, and the intricate web connecting all living beings. However, like all stories of growth and learning, the day came when Emily had to face the reality that her friends needed to return to the wild, where they belonged, to lead their own territories and contribute to the preservation of their species. The parting, though necessary, was one of the most difficult and defining moments of her life. As she grew older, Emily began to understand the complexity of her father's work and the lofty goals of the organization he led. She knew that the idyllic days with Shadow and Onyx could not last forever, and that they were ambassadors of their species, destined to live independently in the deep forest. When Emily was 11, the reality of separation arrived. One autumn morning, lengthy discussions took place among conservationists, biologists, and her father. They were preparing for the process of releasing Shadow and Onyx back into the wild as part of the organization's wildlife reintroduction program. For Emily, though proud of the significant role her friends would play in species preservation, the news was a heartbreaking shock. On the day of the farewell, the reserve buzzed with final preparations. Transport crates, lined with familiar items to provide comfort for the two jaguars, were meticulously checked. Emily spent every possible moment with Shadow and Onyx, softly talking to them, reinforcing the love and reassurance she felt for them. "You're going home," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "To a place where you truly belong, where you'll be free." Shadow, ever alert, gently approached Emily, rubbing his head against her hand, as if understanding the significance of the moment. The farewell was a blend of tears and smiles. Strengthened by her father's conviction that this was the right thing to do, Emily waved until the trucks disappeared from view, carrying away a large part of her heart. The years that followed were a period of growth and learning for Emily, as she immersed herself in conservation studies and biology, determined to carry on her family's legacy. However, the longing for her Jaguar friends never left her, and the hope of seeing them again burned in her heart like an unquenchable flame. At 23, driven by nostalgia and a desire to verify the success of Shadow and Onyx's reintegration, Emily organized an expedition to find them in the Great Smoky Mountains Reserve, where they had been released. Accompanied by a team of documentary filmmakers and biologists, she embarked on this emotional journey, carrying both hope and fear of the unknown. Upon arriving at the reserve, the deep green of the oak and pine forests welcomed the team. Emily felt transported back to her childhood. Every scent, every sound of the forest evoked vivid memories of her youth. The following days were spent tracking the Jaguar's movements through carefully fitted GPS collars attached before their release. Then, one rainy afternoon, as the team navigated a muddy trail, a slight movement in the dense underbrush caught everyone's attention. Hearts pounding, cameras ready, all eyes turned to Emily, awaiting the moment that would define the trip. The humid forest air enveloped Emily and her team as they cautiously advanced. Every sound in the forest seemed amplified. Each snap of a twig, each distant birdsong created a soundscape both beautiful and daunting. Leading the group, Emily felt the weight of expectation on her shoulders. Her eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, searching for any movement that might indicate the presence of her old friends. Time passed slowly, and the sun began to dip toward the west, casting long shadows through the canopy. The local guide, a man named David who knew the forest like the back of his hand, signaled for silence. They had entered an area where, according to the tracking devices, Shadow and Onyx had recently been detected. Emily felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. She knew that the Jaguars, though they might recognize her, had likely changed significantly after years in the wild. They were no longer the cubs who played with her at the reserve. Now they were predators adapted to a harsh environment. Suddenly, David stopped and quietly pointed toward a dense thicket ahead. Slight movements could be seen, and a low, almost purring sound emerged. Emily's heart raced. She held her breath, camera ready in hand, trying to control her trembling anticipation. The foliage stirred more forcefully, and then a majestic form slowly emerged. It was Onyx, unmistakable with the distinctive spots on his coat and his regal posture. He paused and looked directly at Emily. After an emotionally charged moment of eye contact, Onyx approached closer, his stance slightly relaxed, a sign Emily hoped was acceptance. As he rubbed against her legs, each step light and graceful, Emily felt relief and joy flood her heart. The tense atmosphere began to dissipate as Onyx continued to emit soft purrs, which she understood as a sign of recognition. Onyx stopped a few steps from Emily, his large golden eyes fixed on her. Suddenly, with remarkable grace for such a large predator, he moved closer and gently rubbed against her legs, a typical Jaguar behavior for marking territory. But in this case, it seemed like a gesture of recognition. Emily, overcoming her initial fear, reached out and gently touched Onyx's head, feeling the familiar softness of his fur. An emotional smile spread across her face as tears welled up. Onyx then did something that surprised everyone. He sat down near Emily, maintaining constant eye contact, as if ensuring she was truly there with him. Emily knelt, bringing herself to eye level with the Jaguar, feeling a wave of emotions surge within her. The reunion exceeded anything she had hoped for. After the emotional reunion, Emily spent several hours observing Onyx in his forest territory. Watching him interact with his environment and later with Shadow, who appeared afterward, it was clear that both had adapted well and thrived in the wild. Seeing them in their natural habitat gave Emily a new perspective on the importance of the conservation work her family had pursued. It was living proof that efforts to reintroduce animals into the wild could succeed, a testament to her father's legacy. As dusk gave way to twilight, Emily knew it was time to say goodbye once more. With a heavy heart, she approached Onyx for a final farewell. This time, there were no tears, only gratitude and fulfillment. She whispered her goodbyes, promising to continue fighting for the cause that had bound them together. Onyx, seeming to understand that this was a moment of parting, gave her one last piercing look and gently nudged her hand before turning away, silently disappearing into the dense forest, returning to the shadows that were now his home. Emily returned to her everyday life, carrying not only the memory of this emotional encounter, but also a renewed passion for conservation. She resolved to follow in her father's footsteps, expanding and promoting efforts to ensure a future where humans and animals could coexist harmoniously. Onyx's farewell reinforced her commitment to this future, to protecting wildlife and preserving the natural world. This reunion, captured in footage that quickly spread worldwide, became a powerful symbol of the connection possible between humans and animals, as well as a compelling testament to the urgent need for environmental conservation.